unlocking the power of better brand health tracking. And help me welcome from Quantilope, Peter Ashmanite, Sam Usher, and Gianna Saladino. Round of applause, please.
So a decade ago,
Perfect. Okay.
like 2010, 2012, I was leading a marketing department at the global #1 in dairy products. Danone is the company, right? So some of you might be familiar with that company. And I was trying the thing that everyone tries to do as a marketer, right? So let the brands grow, right? So how do you let those brands grow? And we explored a strategy that is very much linked to occasions, right? Think, when do you actually consume yogurt? When do you actually consume it? So it could be breakfast, could be as a snack, could be for lunch, replacing a high carb meal, anything like that. And we try to link our brands to those specific occasions. And we really pushed it, linking those brands to those occasions. Now, it resulted in really high growth for all those brands, right? So the strategy was paying off, connecting your brands to those occasions. Now, 10 years, 12 years later, we're much smarter being here in Austin. We really have a structured approach on how you exploit those occasions. And by the way, it's far more now, much more than occasions. It's a lot of so-called category entry points. Think about, when you think category entry points, think about thoughts and feelings that shoppers, consumers have in mind when approaching a category. Thoughts and feelings that consumers have in mind when approaching a category. And you want to be, as a brand, you want to be connected to those thoughts and feelings, because consumers never want to shop for a brand. They want to shop for a product that is matching their thoughts and feelings they have in mind when they're entering a category. So all that science behind is now explained by my fabulous colleagues, Gianna and Sam, who are going to introduce you to that science, how we exploit it, how we do research about it. So Sam, Gianna, floor is yours.
Perfect. Thanks, Peter. So I'm incredibly excited to introduce to you a brand new approach to brand health tracking based on Professor Jenny Romaniak's book, Better Brand Health, developed at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute based off of years of empirical research. If you're not familiar with the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, the EBI is the largest and most recognized institute for marketing research, producing thought leadership pieces such as Byron Sharp's How Brands Grow. This new approach is based on concepts such as category entry points, new tracking metrics such as mental availability, and new analyses including mental advantages. Like all things at Quantilope, we've taken this new approach and fully automated and templatized it in our end-to-end platform. So not only can you access real-time tracking insights, but you also have real-time insights that directly correlate to your business KPIs. So before we jump into it, let me tell you a bit more about myself and why I'm so passionate about brand health tracking. Coming from a traditional agency background, I experienced firsthand the frustrating pain points of traditional trackers. So first, even though almost all companies monitor brand health and spend a lot of money doing so, it's also one of the biggest sources of frustrations for these brands. Many times I run into marketers who had to wait months for their tracking data to come back, only to learn that their KPIs haven't seen any movement. Or they had massive studies with 30 minutes of a questionnaire where they're not using half the data. Trust me, I'm sure we've all seen those presentations that had 60 plus slides of tracking data in the appendices. This is simply not going to help us understand how to grow our brand and make business decisions. The second reason I want to talk about tracking is that we now have enormous amount of empirical data that's showing us how brands grow and also how to understand brand health. What we've learned is that a lot of trackers have not been updated or rooted in this research, and instead are focusing on more of that traditional tracking metrics like awareness, like loyalty, which simply won't help answer the business objectives that your company may have. So Sam, tell us a bit more about what this research means.
Thanks, Gianna. The research shows that there's two components to understanding how brands grow. Byron Sharp, Jenny Romaniak, and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute define brand growth as a mixture of physical availability and mental availability. Physical availability is how prominent your product is at the point of purchase. So this typically includes your distribution network, how wide your range is, where your product is located on shelf, and how prominent it is on shelf. So this could be, if your product's at eye level, or if it's buried at the bottom shelf among tons of different brands. There's lots of different components that go into physical availability, and a lot of times they're outside of our control. The second pillar of brand growth, and this is really where we can have extensive impact as marketers and market researchers, is mental availability. Mental availability is how easily your brand comes to mind in actual buying situations. And in most cases, the brand that comes to mind is the brand that gets purchased. You can think of mental availability as the mental real estate that your brand takes up in a consumer's mind. And this is important because the more mental availability your brand has, the more likely your brand is to experience growth. At the end of the day, it's advertising and marketing initiatives that build the key structures that allow your brand to become mentally available in buying situations. So, how do we increase mental real estate in potential buyers' minds?
So let's start by really focusing on category entry points. Category entry points are the transient thoughts a person has as they're going about their lives, ultimately leading to them becoming a potential category buyer. These are the entry points into your product category. So a way you could think about this would be your needs, reasons, motivations, or occasions that will lead you or influence you into becoming that purchaser. Let me give you a real life example. So this week I was traveling from JFK Airport to Austin for IEX, and I was thirsty and I was feeling a bit tired. So because my flight was early that morning. So I stopped by a local Walgreens and I picked up a Celsius energy drink. So being on the go, being thirsty, feeling tired, and the morning were my entry points into making that purchase that day. So category entry points are really the building blocks to mental availability. So if you can increase the entry points of your brand's network, you will therefore increase mental availability, ultimately increasing the chances of your brand being top of mind during purchase decision making. So why did I choose Celsius out of all of the options I had on shelf? Well, that's because of the subconscious associations Celsius has in my mind as a beverage that instantly delivers on giving me energy or when I need to pick me up.
Let's take another example with Gatorade. When I think about Gatorade, I think of it as a sports drink for athletes. Therefore, I'd probably consider purchasing Gatorade in different situations than Celsius. I know for me personally, the only time I ever really considered purchasing Gatorade on a consistent basis is when I participated in an intramural volleyball league in New York last summer. Now, let's take another example similar to Gianna's Celsius example at the airport. We're here at IEX. We probably woke up early to get to the conference. We're out of the house. We're busy making lots of new connections, and we might need an afternoon pick-me-up. More likely than not, Gatorade would not be our first choice, even though it would be a perfectly suitable option for this situation. But because it mostly has associations built against athletics and sports, I'm more likely to go with something similar to maybe a nice coffee or soda. At the end of the day, what's important to remember is building category entry points is a really effective marketing strategy, because once you establish those initial connections, it will generate returns for decades. So this may sound interesting, but let's talk about how you can actually implement this into a brand health tracker. This is how simple and beautiful your brand health tracker could look. This is a sneak peek of a real tracking study that we're running at Quantilope, and you can see here how we can ask respondents to select all the brands that they associate with the different category entry points that are appearing across the top. This is our key question that will give us the basis for our mental advantage and mental availability metrics that will serve as the KPIs in our brand health tracker. Okay, so now we know the basics of CPs, but how can we actually use this to track brand health? Brands can visualize how strongly they're associated with different category entry points and identify where they might have a mental advantage. A mental advantage can occur when a brand performs stronger than expected on any category entry point, given its brand size and how common or important that entry point is to the category. Accounting for brand size allows us to make sure that we don't overinflate or underestimate the importance of a brand attribute relationship, and accounting for an attribute's commonality allows us to have a framework to make sure we're accounting for our efforts in the right places. So we can see here that brand A actually has a strong mental advantage on breakfast, and it's an area where they're over-indexing, while it's performing more weakly on the go. With this information, the team can then go ahead and build marketing campaigns that defend its position as an ideal option for breakfast, while also starting to strengthen associations on the go. One key caveat here is that we can also see that brand C and brand E have strong associations and mental advantages on the go, so it's beneficial for the team to be strategic with their efforts here. On the other hand, we can also identify places where no brand has a mental advantage. So for example, thirst quenching and treating myself. Armed with a view into our buyers' minds, we're able to start seeing how we compare against competitors, identify white space opportunities, and start to build on these associations, perhaps with product innovation or specialized marketing campaigns that target specific CEPs. At the end of the day, we want our brand to be thought of for more CEPs than any other brand in the category.
So now the goal of us tracking these category entry points is to ultimately increase our mental availability and drive brand growth. So one of our core metrics that we also track is mental market share. Mental market share is a composite score taking into account all of your category entry points and all of your brands, including competitors that we're tracking, and gives you a single metric to tell you how present your brand is in the mind of consumers. So the higher your mental market share, the more present your brand is to consumers and the more likely you're going to be thought of at that time of purchase. So now we also have 3 additional KPIs that we recommend tracking, including mental penetration, network size, and share of mind. So these additional metrics will also give you a diagnostic view into your brand's health and also give you a clear opportunity to identify where you need to improve or make actions upon, simply by understanding whether or not your brand is performing on par or higher or lower than expected for your category entry points.
Now, let's take a step back to finish up and talk about why all this matters. We want our brand health trackers to equip us with the data to take concrete actions and know that our brand tracking is really giving us value. I talked to a brand recently who told me that their brand health tracker identified that their brand was seen as friendly, which wasn't really helpful to them, and they didn't know what to do with that information. By focusing on category entry points, we can get really concrete takeaways in 3 key areas. First, it can help us to evaluate creatives both past and present in order to build on our messaging or refresh our messaging. It can also help to identify gaps for future creative and can even be used in creative planning or creative briefs. Second, it can help us to measure the overall quality of our marketing campaigns to ensure that we're reaching a wide category buyer audience and we're increasing associations with those key entry points. Finally, it helps us to track success over time by letting us see our mental advantage grow and overall have our mental availability grow as well, likely with sales data. So with that, we'd like to bring Peter back up to the stage for a fireside chat.
Thank you. Thank you. We saw there are questions also in the app. So if you turn around, there's a Quantilope booth just behind you. So if you want to ask those experts on all your questions, they're there to help you to set up better brand health tracking. I know actually in the US it's something that is just upcoming and it's going to be big, this wave. In Europe, a lot of companies has already taken that over, right? And we see a lot of bigger companies jumping on that approach and kind of replacing their brand tracking with a better brand health tracking approach. So replacing also brand funnel metrics that were not actionable with a better brand health tracking. So I'm gonna have some questions, but again, you're gonna have those answers on the booth. And if you don't come for the answers, you can also come for cake pops. They also have cake pops there. So if you want to come grab a cake pop, gotta get there. But folks, one question that I have as an ex-marketer, it's usually the setup phase is quite important, right? For setting up the category entry points. Mm-hmm. So how do you help brand teams setting that up?
Yeah, so we know it's very intimidating and a bit of a challenge to really come up with those category entry points. So what we've done is establish a process through our inspiration workshop. So this session is a collaborative workshop that we have with our clients to not only define the category that we're looking to track, but also to start brainstorming on that list of possible category entry points. So we usually come up with about 50 or so, and during that session, we use one of the frameworks from Jenny's book, The 7 W's. So this talks about the why, the where, the when, the how we're feeling, the who we're with. It gives us it gets us out of that conventional approach of building that standard list and really breaking out of it. We also, of course, use our AI copilot Quinn as well to create some efficiencies. So we will actually use Quinn to generate a list of CEPs before the session, so we have inspiration going into it. Ultimately, the biggest goal out of this is to make sure we have a robust list of category entry points, so we're capturing not only areas of opportunity, but the really important entry points that we need to track as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Now another one actually is that from science it shows that the mental market share is really connected to actual market share, right? And that's the whole power of the model. That's the first really time for a long time that the metric, the KPI, is so strongly connected to actual market share. So it can help marketers really to think about brand growth. So I want to have your also first feeling about the impact that you can create with that approach. How do you see that impact coming with brand teams there?
Yep, so far what we're seeing is that we've been able to provide our brand teams with very clear, actionable data on exactly how their brand's performing, as well as which other brands are winning in that category space. As well as, I think the biggest key is identifying that white space opportunity in the category. And what brands have been able to do is use that white space to really leverage and work harder on their communication or creative messaging. So a really great example that we have is one of our clients, Florida's Naturals. We're able to validate their current campaigns because the top CEPs were the same as in our tracker. So they were validating that campaign, and then they took the next top 3 or 4, and they actually created different iterative versions of their current campaign based on these CEPs to try to target a new target audience, as well as continue to grow their brand, and that's going to be rolling out next year.
Okay, awesome. Last question from my side. A question about, again, the approaches, the use cases of that all analysis. And there's a lot of marketing talk, obviously, around that. But there's other use cases as well. I know we have a few clients also using that for product innovation, right? So tell us a little bit more how it's used for product innovation. What do you see there? What's the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So this can have a really big impact on things, like Peter said, beyond just marketing, like product innovation. So for example, we work with a client in the chocolate space who ran a Better Brand Health tracker with us. And before the tracker, they did have a hypothesis that they were pretty closely associated with gifting. But after running the tracker with us, they saw just how strong that mental advantage was, and were able to double down and start creating a new line of products that was specific to the gifting occasion. So Christmas-related things, birthday-related things, Valentine's Day-related things, and really start to defend that mental advantage and grow their brand even further. On the other hand, like Gianna was kind of talking about earlier with white space innovation, we have a client who's a small spice brand, and when they ran this Better Brand Health tracker with us, they were able to see that no brand in their category owned anything related to cooking with recipes. So they started to investigate partnerships with food blogs and recipe apps, things of that nature, in order to create a presence in that space, grow their brand, and in turn, grow their sales data.
Awesome. All right, so if you have more questions, again, there's the booth of Quantilope. Let the experts help you with the questions and get a cake pop. See you down there. Thanks a lot for your attention.